Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Maurice Stinnett, and I serve as the Global Head of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Warner Music Group. And I want to welcome each and every one of you today to our very first episode of Black in America, a new initiative presented to you by Topsify. So what is Black in America? There is no one story or definition of what it means to be Black in America. Black in America is joy, heartbreak, faith, brilliance, imagination, love, resilience, community, and creativity. The list goes on, family. And during this series, we will hear from some of the best artists and songwriters out there about what it means to them to be Black in America and what songs have shaped the soundtrack of their experience, what inspires them, and where do they see themselves and the world going next. Now, on today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with the legendary production duo, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Not only do they have 5 Grammys to their name, they also have countless gold, platinum, and diamond records through their collaborations with artists such as Janet Jackson, Usher, Mariah Carey, George Michael, and more. We talked about their childhoods, the power and courage of strong Black women in their lives, their personal and career triumphs, and their reflections on their own experiences of being Black in America. So I only have one question for you, family. Are you ready?
I'm Jimmy Jam, and I'm Black in America.
I'm Terry Lewis, and I'm Black in America.
I could not be happier to have you both here. Thank you for carving out this time to have a chat with me. As they said, my name is Maurice Stinnett, and it's just a pleasure. So let's take it way back, gentlemen. You're joining me today because we're curating a series here for Warner Music Group talking about your experiences being Black in America. And I think it could not be more of a relevant time. I think it's always relevant given that I'm Black in America, but right now, very timely to hear from some of these generals such as yourselves in the music industry, because our theme for this year is music and movement, right? And we know that music has the power to create and to sustain these movements and has undergirded so many movements. And so this whole Topsify experience and conversation. So let's take it way back. First question coming to you, and I'm gonna start with Terry. First question, let's take it way back. Tell me about what it was like for you growing up Black in America.
Well, I've never known what it's like to be white in America because I've always been Black in America. I didn't think I had an option.
Yes, sir.
But as a young Black child, not knowing what you are or who you are, you grow up and you develop certain habits. I remember, I think you want to know maybe the diverse things that we would experience as Black kids. From an early age, we just hung out in the street. We played. You had to be in the house when the street lights came on. We played tackle football in the street. We played baseball in the street. And one thing that you learn that would probably be a dichotomy from other cultures was that I don't know why we did it, but we ran from the police whenever we saw. It was just a natural thing that everybody would just run. You wouldn't even know why you was running. You just be running because you wasn't doing nothing wrong.
Right.
But you see the police and you shoot, you go.
Wow. Now, tell me where were you born and raised at so I can get some context of where this was at?
Well, I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just in any Black community that I've ever been in. That was kind of just the context of the culture. It was just kind of the fabric of what we did.
In your community, there was a sense of community. I'm hearing we played together. There was universal rules. When the street lights came on, you knew it was time to get home, right? And there was also another universal rule. You see the police. We don't know why, but we going in the opposite direction. We running.
Absolutely. And we were also governed not only by our parents, but all the other parents in the community.
There you go.
So anybody could grab you and get that butt if you was out around. So it was always a thing of respect and accountability.
I love that. Jimmy, speaking about this communal type raising, he was in Nebraska. Talk to me about your experience. Where were you born and raised at, and what was it like for you?
Born and raised in Minneapolis, south side of Minneapolis. I just remember that the dividing lines of, the closer you got or the smaller the streets got, when you were, we lived on 41st, right? When you got to 50th, it was pretty much white, all white and affluent, I guess you could say. When you got to 38, 36, down towards those numbers, it was more black and more poor or whatever you'd call it. So I always felt, looking back on it, that uniquely I was kind of right in the middle of it. Like literally, when I remember when they started making the school districts different to try to integrate the schools, I remember living literally across the street. The school I wanted to go to was Central High, which was basically where Prince went. And it was like the black high school. It was like where I wanted to go. But because I literally lived across the street on the line of 41st, I ended up going to a school called Washburn, which was kind of the white school. And I never could figure that out. Like, why the heck am I going to that school? But I was always raised to, I never really looked at skin color so much growing up. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do certain things. I had as many white friends as black friends. I listened to pop music as much as I listened to black music. I just was kind of the kid in the middle, I guess I would say. But what we had in common was with Terry was very much that sense of that the police, and I had one of my best friends growing up, his dad was a police officer. So I didn't have an immediate thought that the police weren't good. But as I got a little older, I just knew that it seemed like there weren't good things happening when they were around, so to speak. It was a kind of an interesting thing for me. And I don't know that, but that's what I remember.
That's powerful. You both speak about this whole police thing. I'm curious. There was never an intentional conversation about your relationship with the police, if I'm gathering this correctly, or was there? Maybe I should ask that. Or was this more some just observation? And it's just like, again, this is just what we collectively, intuitively, instinctively knew that this is not a good space to be around when they're here. You didn't have a talk about the police, or did you? I guess that's the question.
No, there was no, I guess, talk, as you say, like that was the talk, like you give your kids the talk about how to deal with the police when they address you. It was just a community thing. I think it was, like Jam said, is when the police came around, generally there was nothing good going on at the time, because if they don't know you, they weren't from your community. We played in the street, and I think the older kids had relationships, or rather good, bad, or indifferent, with the police, and they would run. So then, even as a young kid, 4 or 5 years old, you just start doing what the older kids do. So you would just make yourself scarce. They coming, okay, because they're gonna get you for doing something wrong. And so after a while, that just becomes the habit. Not to say that the policemen were bad or bad people or are going to do anything bad. It's just the habits that you develop just based on the community that you grow up in.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. All right. So, gentlemen, I'm looking at your playlist, and you entitled this Faith and Empowerment. And I'm curious to unpack that. Why the title, Jimmy? Why the title Faith and Empowerment? And how do these songs speak to your faith? And how do they speak to empowerment?
Well, I think music is just as a soundtrack of our lives. And I think that motivation is very important. Positivity is very important. Our favorite song that we've ever, well, I hesitate to say wrote and produced, because it's more like the song that I always say God delivered to us and then let us deliver, which is optimistic. I think you need to have that attitude in order to go forward with whatever it is you're dealing with in these days of obviously the pandemic that's going on, but also in the days of probably the well, I won't say worse disease, but certainly the disease of racism that's going on. And I think that it's all about songs that empower, that make you feel, maybe say a lyric in a way that you receive musically different than in a conversation you would receive it. But then it also inspires you to then bring that next person along, or that, when it's not just something you take in yourself, it's something you take in, but then you want to share it with other people. And that's the great thing about music. So to me, the songs on the list are really songs that I think should make you feel empowered. They make us feel empowered, but they also make us try to be better people and do better things. And I think anything that motivates you to do that is a good thing.
Critically important, and it speaks again, you said, for your experience, your culture, speaking and amplifies that. I love it. Do you want to chime in there for me, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say that, you know, I'm a faithful person. And what that means to me, faith is always active. You are what you believe. Okay. And you have to go for that in order to be that. So the songs there are songs that came from, a lot of them from the civil rights era, which we grew up in the middle of. You know, we weren't in the forefront, but we were somewhere in the middle. So it really affected our lives in a lot of different ways, especially for me in terms of I grew up in nation time. It was all about the one, you know, the fist is about being together. Uh, so those songs reflect that. And in that, faith is power. That's what empowers you, because it brings you to who you are, what you believe, how you express it, how you put it forward. That music reflects that for me.
I love that. Faith in action. So it's an expression of your faith. They capture and express it in a way that oftentimes words fail to, as you said, words fail to convey, but the lyrics, the melody, the sound, it's that faith in action. I love that. And it's who you are.
It's power. It's power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why it's empowerment in there. It's enriching. It takes you to another place.
It's empowerment. And I love what you're saying. Not only does it bring us through, it calls us to action. Like you said, it's action. It moves us to do something. Instead of just sitting there lamenting and hoping, it moves you. I love that. I love that. So then, gentlemen, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Jimmy. I'm going to say then, in one word, I want you, and it's very challenging, but I want you to describe the Black experience. I mean, I've heard what you said, your background, but if you were to distill that down to one word for the Black experience, what would you say?
I don't know. As I sit here right now, and it would probably be different words on different days according to how the day is going. But sitting here right now, the word I guess that comes to my mind is proud. I love overall, I love growing up with the perspective that I have on life because of being Black, of not, you know, it's almost, I guess, and I hope I'm not going to say this wrong, but, you know, it's almost when we have discussions about race and you're trying to explain to someone and get them to see your point of view on something, if they haven't lived it or they haven't experienced it, they don't get it, right? And so I sometimes I feel like with, you know, when I'm speaking to someone who's white, who doesn't get it, I always try to use a metaphor. I try to use something that relates to them in their life, because I can't really just tell them my life and the things that I feel and have them relate to it necessarily. So I kind of go out of my way to try to make it something that is relevant to them in a way that would resonate, I guess, in my explanation. But I just say, I say proud because I feel like Terry and I, we kind of we sort of joke about it, but we always go, Matt, imagine if we did the same things we've done and we were white. We'd be like, you know, we'd be the kings of the world, you know. But but I feel that way about you know, we know that as Black people we have to, there's burdens. Well, I don't want to say burdens, but there's realities that are on us that are different. I remember when I was the chairman of the Recording Academy, and I was the first chairman of the Recording Academy, and it happened in their 50th year. And I remember thinking, you know, obviously Black music is the foundation of all music. And an organization like the Grammys, what took 50 years for something like that to happen? But my overall thought was, don't mess this up. Because if I don't do a good job, then I've messed it up for a whole race of people who would want to aspire to do what I'm doing. And I think that's kind of the reality or the burden or whatever you want word you want to use that I think as Black people we have is when we do something wrong, it's not just that we did something wrong, but we're somehow then ruining the chances for other people in our race to have those opportunities. Um, so the fact that we've been able to do what we've done with those kinds of expectations or those kind of limitations makes me proud. It makes me proud. It makes me proud to be able to have a discussion like this that's not, there's no arrogance, there's no threat, there's no, I mean, the way that we get perceived sometimes, where it's just a discussion to try to have a better understanding of the commonalities that we have as Black people, but then as just people in the world.
I love
so, yeah. Okay, so there's my one word. And sorry about that.
No, Jimmy, that's exactly
proud's my word.
That's what we were looking for. That's beautiful. And you packaged it great. Like you're saying, given the barriers, given the reality, given all of the oppression and the systemic, whatever we can talk about, we can go through the list of things. It brings you great pride to say, I'm a part of that lineage. I'm a part of that experience because of look at what we were able to do despite all of that, right? And so that brings me great pride. I hear you loud and clear. I hear you loud and clear. Terry, for you, when you were to think about this, what's a word that comes to mind for you?
Powerful.
Powerful.
Yeah, and I say that just thinking back on upbringing, the people in my life, my grandmother, my mother, all the various women basically who raised me. They were powerful. They taught me powerful things. They taught me to think powerfully. I was never told that I couldn't do something or I wouldn't do anything. The concept was that you could do anything that you put your mind to. You could be anything that you wanted to be, in spite of all the other trimmings that might come along with it. And so, you know, the way I say it now is that your attitude will dictate your altitude. So that power is in me, and I try to instill that power into my kids. And then when the opportunity comes, it's up to you to be powerful and to blow through whatever barrier there is. Because just knowing how it was is one thing. Being Black in America, can you imagine what it was being Black in America and a Black woman in America? And, you know, those are the shoulders that we stand on as Black men, was the Black women, because a lot of times the Black men were absent.
That's right. That's right. I totally identify with you saying, being raised by 3 strong Black women, my mama, grandma, my aunt, powerful. And I get that. And so that is wonderful that we have been able, you all have articulated and been able to take the pain and all of you put it, as you put it, the trimmings of life, right? All that other stuff, and still distill it down to pride and power. I mean, that is beautiful, that despite all of that, when I think of the Black experience, and I just heard, was pride and powerful. How beautiful is that? So thank you so much for that. Now, when you think about your songs, gentlemen, pick one song for me. I know this theme of one going to be challenging, but pick one of the songs that best represents in your experience what you just said. So now you had pride and you have powerful. What song from your playlist represents that for you? What gives you that sense of pride, Jimmy? What song comes to mind when you talk about that pride that you're speaking of on that list? And then Terry, I want you thinking about what song represents that powerful essence that you were talking about.
I'm just going to say optimistic, because I think the power of optimism is the ultimate power. But when people talk and ask about, you know, favorite songs, to me, there's a few different levels. There's the level of trying to, on the technical side, trying to pull off something that you hear in your mind, that you know, can we get this to sound the way we're hearing it in our minds? It can sometimes be the experience of making the song. Sometimes it can be the result of the song, of what the song does, how it touches people in that. And for me, that song is one that works on all levels. And I'll tell you, it was interesting. We were partnered with A&M Records at that point in time. We released that through our label Perspective Records. And when we released the song, I remember we had been told, we had the group in Philadelphia for something, and we wanted to bring them to New York. And the label said, oh, there's no money, there's no budget. So we basically just went in our own pockets. We went to New York. And I remember when we left New York, we were the most played song on the radio at that point in time. And I remember sitting in a marketing meeting, and there was a guy in the marketing meeting that all he did was just look at stats and stuff. Like, so when they'd get around to you and they'd go, okay, what do you guys got? And before we could even say anything, the guy went, holy, these guys got the #1 record. It's like 70 spins on WBLS, and it's whatever, whatever, whatever. And everybody looked at us and they said, how'd you guys do that? I said, well, we took the group to New York, like you told us not to do, but we took the group to New York because we knew if we put the group in front of people,
yes,
it would have an impact.
Yes.
On them. We had gotten nominated for a Grammy for that project, and the label had gotten nominated, A&M had gotten nominated for 12 or 13 Grammys. The only Grammy they won that year was for Sounds of Blackness. Wow. And so I ran into one of the people that worked at the label, and they said, I said, hey, how's it going? And they said, oh, it's a rough night, it's a rough night. And then they said, oh, well, not for you guys. And we said, what do you mean not for you guys? Aren't we partners? Aren't this right. The partner? We win, we all win, right? But that wasn't the attitude. And so the fact that we had to overcome, if you will, the obstacles to get a Grammy, to make the record. When the record went #1, it was the first record to go #1 since I think Oh Happy Day. It was a gospel record. And all of those things. So it was almost despite, you know, the cards we were dealt, or despite what it was. And so for that reason, I always come back to that song because, and then it wasn't about, I remember Herb Alpert though, I will say this, Herb Alpert called us when the record first came out. And we, first thing I said to him was, oh, Herb, good to hear from you. We're most added on the radio. We got this or whatever, whatever, whatever. And excuse my language, he goes, I didn't call to hear about that bullshit. He said, I called because I just want to tell you how proud I am to be associated with this record and that you would bring this record to us at A&M. And I found out later that his girl that works for him, who still works for him, as a matter of fact, when he had come into the office that day, she said he came into the office in tears. She said he sat in his car. He didn't come in for a long time. He came in tears, and he walked in and he said, give me Jam and Lewis on the phone. So that's how that record affected him. So the power of music to do that to me is all wrapped up in that song. So I hate to be redundant, but that for me that's the song.
You unpacked it beautifully. That optimism, that power, that ability to transform, speaking on behalf of our culture. That's why that represents being Black in America to you. Makes sense to me. Thank you so much. Now I want to know yours, Terry. What do you have?
Mine would be the same for different reasons, but if I had to pick another one on there, Curtis Mayfield was always kind of the voice of my upbringing, especially with Blackness, you know. There were a couple songs that I put on there, but We're a Winner. Whenever I hear that song, that affirmation is so powerful. Never let anybody say that you can't make it because a feeble mind is in your way. Never. That song is so powerful. But right. Optimistic is still, for me, my #1.
One of the songs, gentlemen, now that you shared that is on the playlist, that is clearly a proud, powerful anthem, right? Using both your words, sticking with that theme. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud, right? The one and only James Brown. And so clearly James was saying, I'm proud of my Blackness. I'm affirming my humanity, right? In a way, my identity is, how do you see that song as connected to Black life today? Like in today's context, how do you see that song being connected? So Jimmy, I'm gonna come back to you.
Well, it's probably a song that doesn't get played enough or heard enough, quite honestly. I can tell you that my household growing up, I mean, there never was a sense of difference. I was always taught, you know, do unto others. I was taught those types of things. And I wasn't really aware of so much being black or white, or that there was any sort of divide that existed, because I just didn't grow up like that. And part of that was being in music, because all people love music. So when I'd go watch my dad play, it would be mostly for white people, and they'd all be dancing and great, and they'd come up afterwards and go, "Oh, that was great, that was fantastic." So I never saw that there was like, after they say, "Oh man, that was great," and then they go home and they go, "Oh, that nigga, whatever, he can play the piano or what." I didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that separation. But when "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud" came out, and I was a huge James Brown fan, the biggest, that song changed my life, because not only was it like a hit song and a groove, but it was the first song that really made me aware that I am different, and I'm embracing my difference of being, which probably goes back to my word of proud.
I love that. And to your point, what you're saying about today, you're like, basically, it's not amplified enough. We're not hearing that enough today to take ownership of that, of understanding my difference is something to be valued and to be proud about, right? It doesn't diminish yours, but it amplifies the fact that my difference is to be valued and something to be proud about. Love that. I love that.
Terry and I remember when we were younger, we decided to get some cars, some BMWs. We wanted these BMWs, and we had said, "Oh, we're going to get these BMWs." And I remember walking into the dealership, and we would sometimes just purposely go into the dealerships bummy, right? Because we wanted to see who was actually going to treat us like customers, right? And it always would be, it never would be the manager or that person. It would always be whoever the young salesman was, or whatever. And it was like, "Oh yeah, we want a couple cars," and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And then we'd say, "I want the black one, he wants the blue one." And it'd be like, "Okay." And then he'd run to the manager, and then the manager would come back, "Oh, how are you doing? Oh, Mr. Lewis. Oh yeah, it's so nice to." And it's like, "Yeah, no thanks. Where were you guys when we first walked in?" Right? Because of this expectation and this thing. And so to grow up with that, or to get on a plane and have them send you to main cabin, and it's like, "No, we have a first class ticket," or whatever. But it's just the assumption that we are not supposed to be there. We've been kicked out of first class because people have been like, "You're not supposed to be up here," And so those kinds of little things, and once again, these are not complaints. These are just observations. These are just the cards that were dealt. But after you live with that for so long, you begin to recognize it. When you walk in a jewelry store and all of a sudden they start closing the counters, right? Or you can just watch people. You walk down a street and you watch somebody clutch their purse a little tighter than they normally would. It's all these little tiny things that just kind of affect the way you go about living your life. And I'm sorry, I'm off on a whole different tangent.
No. That's a perfect segue. No, you're talking about being black in America. That's what you're talking about. No matter what your status, that's a reality. You were just saying, no matter what our status is, our bank account looks like, we are first seen as black men, and that means something, right? And
I'll tell you the best example. And Terry can chime in on this. We were honored by the state of Minnesota. They did a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis Day, and they honored us. And we went to the governor's mansion. We were with our moms and our families, and they gave us a proclamation, and it was this beautiful day, and it was a great thing. So after that was done, Terry and I were going to go to work and get some work done. But we decided to stop downtown and grab a bite to eat at a restaurant we liked. As we walk in, there's a couple of people that go, "Oh, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, can we get your autographs?" And whatever. And we're like, "Okay, sure." And we signed. So we're standing there signing autographs. And after a while, there's maybe 6 or 7 of us all kind of standing around. And security guard comes around and he goes, you guys can't stand here." And we're like, "Why?" And he says, "Well, you're loitering." I said, "No, we're not loitering. We're just signing a couple autographs. We're just talking with our friends and stuff." And so they end up calling the police.
Wow.
And we finally get into the restaurant and whatever. I don't remember the particulars of it, but it was that reality check. Like, you can be at the governor's office getting a proclamation that it's your day, walking through a mall when people are trying to pay, respects to you and just go, "Hey, we love what you guys are doing. We love your music." And then you get basically berated and like, "I'm going to kick you out the mall if you don't break this up," type of thing. And that's the reality about Black in America. Okay, that's the reality of it, is no matter how high or how successful you get, you're still held to a different standard.
Absolutely. Terry, I'm going to come to you with that. Let's build off of that. Donnie Hathaway's on your list, my beloved fraternity brother. And he says, someday we'll all be free, right? So let's talk about that now. Exactly what, here it is, Jimmy teases up and like, I want to know then, what does freedom mean to you, right? What's that look like? What should freedom look like for Black people in America? Because it doesn't matter where you ascend to with fame, notoriety, or money. What does that freedom look like? So could you unpack that for me, Terry?
Well, freedom. It's a big word, man. But freedom's never free. There's a cost to all freedom. And my freedoms stop where your freedoms begin. Like my freedoms overlap with yours. So I'm free to do anything I want to do as long as it doesn't disrespect your freedom. That's the way I feel, because as a Black person, we're taught to respect other people. And I don't think all people are. People think that they're free to just do whatever they want to do. Yeah, I mean, here we are in COVID right now, and people say, well, I had to wear a mask, that's messing with my freedoms. Well, your freedom to not wear a mask should not infringe on my freedom to live or not be sick. So like the two work together. There's something about that. So to people that believe that their freedoms are more free than someone else, it's odd to me. I just don't get that. If I can do something to help you and save you from peril or trouble, then I'm down to do that. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what economic ability you have. I just care about you as a human being. That's kind of just a human thing. And that's what human freedom is about.
I love it. I love it. Freedom to fit in. That's the definition of freedom. But then for Black folks specifically, freedom in regards to equity. We just want equity. And so I hear you. So we hear all the time people talking about being woke a lot these days, right? Being woke. You've heard that term. Are you woke? She's woke. He's woke. But Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes were talking about music, and they were saying way before that got popular, right? Telling people, wake up, everybody. So the question for you is, I saw that on your playlist, what are we waking up to? And what do we need to wake up to today? When you think about that song, wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. What is he talking about? Wake up. You talk to me about that. Terry, I'll start with you.
Well, what that song speaks to me is wake up, everybody. We're all connected. No matter who you are, where you are, what you think you are, or what you want to be, we're all connected. And that you can't, the world, it says it right there, the world can't get no better if we just let it happen. No, we have to participate.
I love that.
We're all connected. That's what that song says.
I love that. Here's one of my favorites, Sam Cooke. You all know that crooner, A Change Is Gonna Come. This is one of my personal favorite songs. It's soulful and sober. It's not up-tempo. It's a sober approach in my mind to change. Being Black in America, is that the tempo of change for us? What do you feel when you hear this song, Jimmy?
It's very slow and steady, which you hope that progress is also. And change comes very slow. But no matter how it, but it is going to come, and it's slowly changing. And sometimes you don't see it. It's interesting in the world we live in now, I think, which is now more social media based. It is more of an instant gratification or an instant, a microwavable moment that may be significant. But as Terry said, it's more like, to me, change is more like seeds that you plant. The seeds of change, and then you don't know how. There's some people that fertilize it and water it. So, and you want to watch things grow. And is it going to grow into, is it going to be grass? Is it going to be flowers? Is it going to be trees? Is it going to be something? But it's important to plant those seeds. That's the part of it that doesn't necessarily get seen a lot, is when the seeds are being planted. But the result gets seen. I think what happens, particularly on social media, you see the result of things.
And we have to be active participants. What you both said is so powerful. Yep, change is incremental. It takes time, but you have to be an active participant. Use that energy that you have to actually fuel the change you want to see. Let me tell you something, gentlemen. I feel like I had church with my uncles, and I appreciate y'all more than you know. I had a fantastic time. You've been gracious with your time. I want to give you the final thoughts. I'll come to you first, Terry. Any final thoughts you want to sign off on for everybody about your experience of being Black in America?
My experience with being Black in America is fantastic because that's what I am. That's who I am. And I'm always on the up and up about it. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, because all the things that are positive or negative are those that shape me. Those are the things that empower me. Those are the things that fuel me. And I'll be Black to the day I die. That's a guarantee.
Yes, sir. And I'll be Black with you. I'm proud about it. I'm proud about it. So I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Jimmy Jam.
I feel honored and privileged to be Black in America. I feel like we have, and when I say we, I mean Terry and myself, as a partnership for 47 or so years, 48, something like that. I think we have the ability to lead by example. And we are an example of what happens when you get together. When we started, we were competitive with each other. We were in different bands, battling each other and that whole thing. We looked at each other, and this would, to me, this is just a lesson of when you watch politics and you watch Democrats and Republicans, or however you want to divide it up. I looked at Terry and I admired him because he was so good at what he did, and it was different than what I did, but he was so good. And he admired me for the same thing. And we were both in successful bands in Minneapolis growing up. But when we teamed up together, and once we figured out how we could figure out that, you know, my pop music sensibilities, his R&B music sensibilities, how we could bring those together, that is what's turned into what Jam and Lewis is. We've never had an argument. And people go, well, how could you never have an argument? And I said, well, let me just say, that's not the same as a disagreement. An argument is something you're trying to win. So in a partnership, if I win the argument, that means Terry loses the argument. And I never want to see Terry Lewis lose at anything.
Come on, man.
So we will have a disagreement, which is different, because a disagreement is something you're trying to find a solution for. Right? So if Terry says, you know, hey, let's make the song a fast song. And I go, okay, well, let's make it a slow song. And now we go, well, let's make it a good song. Okay, we agree with the good song. Now, how do we get there, right? It's like it's like that destination, man. Hey, let's go to the store. How are we gonna get there? We're gonna take the freeway, we're gonna take the tunnel,
yes,
we're gonna take the train, we're gonna take the plane, whatever. It's all about getting to the destination in the best way. And that's the way Terry and I have always operated. And I think if people think about that operating in that sense, I just think it makes for a better way to work. And we can only use ourselves as examples because, like I say, we're almost 50 years in to our relationship now. And it's the best relationship I've ever had in my life. So I just think if you look at things as we can disagree on things without disrespecting each other, without calling people names, without hating the person or whatever, I just think that that's the solution for all people, not only Black people, but just for all people.
Family, I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. And if you did, please hit the subscribe button now and share this with your friends and family, because we have a year of incredible conversations that you don't want to miss. Thanks for listening and take care. Your folks might understand.